Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us to celebrate all things Hedgehog Hollow this evening. My name is Nia Beynon. I'm the editor for the series at Bolded Books. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the author of the Hedgehog Hollow series, as well as many other best-selling series, Jessica Redland. Hi, Jessica, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Very excited to be doing another Facebook Live and celebrating the end of the series. Woo.
Well, that's it. I mean, as many people watching will know, and I mean, I can't quite believe it myself, but the Hedgehog Hollow series was launched back in July 2020, and that was Finding Love at Hedgehog Hollow, the pink one, as we like to call it, the pink cover. Since then, we've released 6 books in the series. It's been enjoyed by over 250,000. There it is, the absolute original. The series has been read by over 250,000 readers around the world. We've had amazing chart success with this series, and nearly 20,000 5-star reviews on Amazon, I was counting up, which is just absolutely phenomenal. So I do really want to start this by saying huge congratulations to you, Jessica, because it has just been the most phenomenal success, and I'm sure you must be so proud of those hedgehogs.
Oh gosh, go hedgehogs go. That's I haven't added up the reviews for a while. Every so often I do, and I was hoping I'd get to the 20,000 so to find out that I have is it's a gift that keeps on giving, those hedgehogs are.
Absolutely is. Why do you think the Hedgehog Hollow series has resonated with so many people?
I think the hedgehogs themselves are the starting point, and hedgehogs are just so adorable, and they're something that we don't, in this country, we don't see that often. They're slightly elusive, and sadly, quite often, the only encounter people have had with them is when they've come into a bit of an argument with a bike or a car, and we don't often see them out and about live. But and therefore, finding out that there are people around the country who rescue them and who give their time and their devotion and their energy and their love to making these very vulnerable creatures, I mean, they officially are classified as vulnerable to extinction, giving them to fresh life and hopefully returning them to the wild and letting them live long and happy lives and have little hoglets. I think that aspect people have just loved. And even around the world, where we have readers in countries that don't have hedgehogs. So, for example, in the USA, they do not have hedgehogs in the wild. In Australia, they do not have hedgehogs in the wild. They have something, and I'm probably going to pronounce this wrong, called an echidna, and it looks a little bit like a hedgehog. Not exactly a hedgehog, but it's got spines, and I think therefore that's the closest thing. But it's part of a completely different family. It's related to the platypus. It's nothing to do with hedgehogs. But I think the rise of hedgehogs as pets, the African pygmy hedgehog was introduced in the 1980s into the USA as a pet. And so there's lots of Instagram profiles of famous hedgehogs like Mr. Pokey, wearing clothes and in backgrounds and actually as pets. And so people love that, but then love discovering that they're in the wild. But ultimately, it's also a story of love, friendship, family, and community. And I think that world draws people in, because absolutely everybody, even if you've never seen a hedgehog in the wild, or you didn't even know what a hedgehog was until you started reading the books, you can relate to all the other aspects that go around it. So it's not purely about just stories of hedgehogs, but it kind of hangs around the hedgehogs. And it's lovely that we've been able to teach people things. I educate without preaching. I'm not somebody who'll be like, oh, you must do this, you must do that to look after hedgehogs. And I get lots of messages from people saying, they've learned something new and they've actually loved that. It's great to read a piece of fiction and come away learning something. So yeah, I think those are all the different reasons it's really resonated.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely learned so much about hedgehogs over the past few years working on these books. It's just fascinating, and it's whenever I see a hedgehog now, I get so excited because I feel like I know something about them. I know a bit more about how to make sure that they're safe, how to make sure they can get around safely. I think that's amazing. And then what you've really done is you've brought that sort of nature aspect and the natural world then to the human world. And obviously we've got your brilliant characters who we get to know, and life isn't always easy for your characters, as it isn't for people in normal real life. So I think that the way that you've brought that sort of nature and real life together, I think is brilliant. And yeah, I mean, obviously I'm a huge fan, but I totally see why you've had so many brilliant readers around the world. lots and lots of people are joining us, Jessica. So I just want to say hi to everyone that said hi to us so far. So hello to Karen, Ian Wilfred, Paula, Grace, Diane, Sheila, Kim Nash, Joyce, Paula, Rachel, yeah, hi, Jessica's mum, Sharon, Rachel Gilby, Sarah Bennett, Andrea, Pat, Katie. We've got so many people here saying hello.
And thank you, everyone.
It's absolutely lovely, and everyone's sharing their love for the hedgehogs, which is great. So you have to be honest now with us, Jessica. How does it feel seeing that final instalment go out in the world? It's a bit of a moment.
Oh my gosh. It's really weird. It's a bit of a mix of emotions. I mean, releasing a new book is always nerve-wracking. There's always the pressure. How will it go down? Will people like it? Will they like it as much as the new one, as the one that went on before, particularly when you're writing a series? So when the feedback started coming in for the first book and I released the second one, would they like it as much as the first one? They loved it. When it came to the third one, would they like that? And that's just gone on all the way through. But there's been so much more pressure on this one because I've been very transparent from book 4 that it would be ending. When we made the decision about what the 6 books were going to be, I was very transparent that it would end at book 6. And there was just an outpouring of, no, how very dare you? He got to go on forever with it. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But no, it needed to end. So there's been a lot of pressure building up to this being the end book, readers, dying to read it, but dreading reading it at the same time, knowing that it is the end of the series. And there's also been this, will I be able to do justice to these characters that everybody has grown to love, to know, to feel like that they're their best friends? And could I wrap up everything in a way that would be surprising and satisfying? And so I definitely felt the pressure, but there was so much excitement too. I love the series. I love the book. I love that it's now out now, and we had a slight delay with the audio version coming out. So great that all the formats are out, and I'm starting to get some amazing feedback from it and lovely comments. Rachel Gilby's just popped one in there saying it's a perfect way to end the series. It's so good, and I've had some lovely feedback like that, saying it really is everything I hoped and more as far as pulling it together.
Karen has got a really good idea here, which is after book 6, just send everyone back to book 1 and repeat, which I think is a really brilliant idea. Thank you, Karen. I think that is absolutely what we should do. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure, and I was so excited to read the final book, and obviously got a bit of a sneak peek before anyone else. And I just thought you did such a brilliant job of tying it all together, not leaving the loose ends, but also leaving us wanting more. And yeah, I think you did such a brilliant job. And Sarah Bennett puts it really poignantly here, saying, you lived with the characters for such a long time. You need a new challenge to keep your writing fresh. And I think that's completely right. And we'll talk a bit later about why the series has come to an end. But I think that, yeah, I think that's very, very true. So why don't we go all the way back to the beginning, and why don't you just remind us of where the idea from Hedgehog Hollow came from? How did it all start?
Okay, so it was a combination of 2 things. So the first thing is that my auntie Gwen, she has rescued hedgehogs for maybe 45 years now. So when I've been to visit her, I've visited the hogs. I've been very aware that there are these amazing volunteers around the country rescuing. She often releases them into my parents' garden. They've got a big garden and it opens onto fields, and so ideal, lots of hedgerows around. And so I knew that one day I'd want to write about a hedgehog rescuer. I wasn't going to be writing about my Auntie Gwen, but I needed a character and I needed a setting for that to really come to mind. I needed a plot point to pull it together. The second thing that happened was that between 2017 and 2019, I studied a master's in creative writing. Just decided I wanted to develop myself academically, do a subject I was really passionate about. My first degree was banking and finance. And yeah. Creative writing I did through the Open University, and we had a coursework assignment where we needed to put a character in an uncomfortable situation. And as soon as I looked at that assignment, the first thing came to mind was me to have a woman being bridesmaid for a wedding where she was in love with the groom, and it just popped into my head, planted itself. I imagined her at the altar, taking the flowers from the bride, wishing it was her getting married, and that character became Samantha, who's the main character throughout the series. Now, having a secret crush on the groom just didn't cut it for me. I like the idea of the groom actually being an ex, so there was a proper connection there. But a situation where nobody knew that Samantha was actually in love with the groom himself didn't even know that that had been the case. So James became her ex-boyfriend, who she'd made out was a casual relationship, when it might have been casual for him, but it certainly wasn't for her. And then I wondered what the relationship between the women would be. I wanted in the story quite early on that Samantha's true feelings for James would come out, and that would come out in quite an awful situation on the wedding day itself, and that the bride, Chloe, would be hurt by that and want Samantha completely out of her life. Now, I figured if they were just friends, it would be easier to cut the friend out, just to say, right, that's it. Don't want you in my life. So it really needs to be family, because it's harder to push a family member out of your life. Sister felt maybe a little bit predictable, but cousins, I felt, added an interesting dimension. So Samantha and Chloe became very close cousins. And I ended up marrying those ideas together. I had these three characters and thought, well, actually, Samantha can be trying to escape from Whitspur Bay, where she was brought up, where James and Chloe were going to have their happy ever after, living just around the corner from her. And she's seeing the man of her dreams of her cousin on a very regular basis and can't cope. So she's fled to the Yorkshire Wolds, and then she stumbles across Hedgehog Hollow, and the story starts as to how she ends up running it. So yeah, inspired by my auntie, inspired by an Open University assignment, and wow, look where it took me.
Yeah.
Later.
I don't think when we started quite where we were going, but I think that's just absolutely amazing story. I feel like this is a good moment, Jessica, if you don't mind doing us a bit of a reading from the new book, and then we'll come back and talk a bit more about the series as a whole.
Okay. So, Christmas Miracles at Hedgehog Hollow, and I will just hold that up for the screen. There we go. It's on there anyway, with the little hedgehog in the corner. It continues Samantha's story. Samantha narrates all of the books, but book 2 onwards have a guest narrator. So it continues Samantha's story, but the guest is the lovely Fizz. She works at the rescue centre, and she's really good friends with Samantha, who runs it. Fizz is in a relationship with Yasmin, who is an artist and sculptor, and Yasmin should have been joining Fizz for a meal out to celebrate Samantha's birthday, but Yasmin cancelled last minute, citing massive work pressures. And so that's what I'm going to read. The reading is from just into chapter 5, when her parents are dropping her off home after the meal, and I've taken out a couple of small spoilers to other plot points, but hopefully everything else makes sense. So, it's such a shame Yasmin couldn't make it tonight, Mum said as we headed into Little Tilbury. Do you think she'll make her deadline? Well, she should do. She works well under pressure, and she's never missed a deadline yet. The way Yasmin's projects came together at the 11th hour was awesome. She could work on a painting or sculpture, I can't say the word sculpture even, for days and sometimes even weeks, and it would look okay. And then suddenly it transformed from okay to brilliant. You can drop me at the end of the lane, I told Dad. It'll be nice to have a blast of air before bedtime. Appleby Lane was on the edge of the village. The 2-bedroom, 200-year-old stone-built cottages had small front gardens surrounded by hedgerows, and on either side of the lane, a hedgerow ran alongside a grassy meadow. Yasmin preferred ultra-modern houses with sharp lines and lots of glass, but there weren't many of those in the Wolds villages, so she'd had to compromise on style. Excuse me. She regularly griped about the uneven walls, small windows and exposed beams, all the characterful elements which I loved. But she spent so little time in the cottage, I'm surprised she even noticed it. Give Yasmin our love, Mum said as Dad pulled up at the lane end. I'm guessing she won't be joining us for Sunday lunch. I doubt it. I shuffled forward and gave them each a kiss on the cheek. See you at Barney's tomorrow. I waved and set off slowly down the lane, keeping my eye out for wildlife. A rustling to my right made me slow my pace further, and I stopped completely, my heart melting as a large, rounded hedgehog emerged from the garden of number 3, sniffed the air, and crossed the lane, disappearing into the meadow. My night was made. I'd loved hedgehogs from the moment I met Gwendolyn Hedgehog Lady Mickleby, a friend of my grandparents, when I was a young child. A combination of seeing how she helped sick and injured hedgehogs and spending so much time at our family farm had sent me down the route of wanting to help animals too, and I couldn't imagine ever tiring of seeing them in the wild. The gentle hoot of a long-eared owl a few paces later stopped me in my tracks once more, and I squinted into the trees, but there was little chance of seeing it in the darkness tonight unless it took flight. There was a car parked outside our cottage, and I recognised it by the glow of the street lamp as belonging to Yasmin's best friend, Ariana. Hopefully, Ariana had just arrived for a fleeting visit, because if she'd been here all evening, I wouldn't be impressed when Yasmin had pulled out of the meal due to her workload. The lights on the car flashed, making me jump. Ariana's girlfriend, Sarah Jade, opened the gate and squealed as she spotted me. "You scared the life out of me, Fizz," she said, clutching her heart dramatically. "Sorry, will you survive?" I joked. "Just about." Sarah Jade removed a hoodie from the back seat and pulled it over her head. My fault for going along with Ariana's horror films fest every time we hit October. Can't stand the things. I'm chumpy all month. "I can't do horror films either," I said, feeling her pain. I'd warmed to Sarah Jade as soon as I met her. She was warm, enthusiastic, and fun to be around. I hadn't warmed to Ariana. She'd been Yasmin's bestie since their days at art college, and I got the distinct impression she tolerated my presence rather than enjoyed it. "I was so relieved when Yasmin got in touch at the start of the week to invite us over," Sarah Jade said. "Ariana had a Nightmare on Elm Street evening planned. I've seen those films loads of times, but that Freddy Krueger still terrifies me." She shuddered. "Anyway, did you have a nice meal?" "Lovely, thanks." My voice sounded a little robotic. Had I heard her right? As we walked across the drive together, I zoned out of her chat about horror films. Yasmin had only pulled out of Sam's meal this afternoon, but it seemed she'd been planning to let me down all week. How could she do that to me? Ariana was in the kitchen topping up 2 glasses of wine when I opened the door. "Hey, Fizzy, how was your night out with your boss's family?" I hated being called Fizzy, especially when Ariana managed to make it sound like an insult. And why did she struggle so much with the concept of having a positive working relationship and a friendship? "It was awesome, thanks," I said in my brightest, bubbliest tone. "How was your evening?" "The best." With a flick of her long chestnut hair, she swept past me. I followed Sarah Jade into the lounge, a warm smile pasted on my face. There was so much I wanted to ask Yasmin about tonight, but I wouldn't embarrass her in front of her friends. There could be any number of reasonable explanations as to why she'd cancelled on me, then spent the evening with them, and we could discuss that when they'd gone. Only they didn't go. Sarah Jade said she'd had a nightmare week in a teaching role, and when she relayed the tale, Yasmin said she sounded like she could do with a drink rather than driving home, so they were invited to stay over. Another bottle of wine was opened, but not being much of a drinker, I made a hot chocolate instead. They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about their college days and the clubbing scene in Hull where they'd met Sarah Jade. Always considerate, Sarah Jade did her best to include me in the conversation. I laughed with them and threw in the occasional question to try to show my interest, but it wasn't easy being the outsider in a tightly knit group who'd known each other for 15 years. I didn't want to be the first to drift off to bed, but by midnight I was flagging and had to call it a night. I hovered in the doorway thinking Yasmin might at least roll off the sofa and kiss me goodnight, but all she did was say goodnight, then launch into another anecdote. I tried not to take it personally. She wasn't one for demonstrations of affection in public, but a brief kiss or even just a hug in her lounge in front of her 2 best friends was hardly public. Every time I drifted off, a whoop of laughter from downstairs jolted me awake. After an hour or so, I was fed up of battling sleep, so I grabbed my phone and scrolled through the socials. Sam had uploaded photos from the meal and tagged in her guests, thanking us for making her birthday so special. I scrolled through them, smiling. It had been a really great day and evening, as were all the get-togethers involving Sam's friends and family, who'd always made me feel so welcome. Another screech of laughter drew my attention away from the photos and to the blank space in the bed beside me. Yasmin and I had been together for more than 18 months now. Moving in with her had been a huge relationship step for me, and I'd assumed it had been for her too. But I had no idea how she felt about things like getting married or having children. I'd lost count of the number of times I'd raised the subject only to have it changed. Perhaps we should have had those conversations before I moved in, to make sure we were on the same page, because more and more often recently, I suspected we weren't. And I was beginning to wonder if we ever had been. So what will happen to Fiz's relationship with Yasmin? Has Yasmin lied to her about having too much work to do and chosen to spend the night with her friends instead? Well, you'll have to read Christmas Miracles at Hedgehog Hollow to find out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jessica. That was such a brilliant reading, and definitely a moment in the book. Well, I already can see from the comments some people have been shouting at the book reading that chapter, so I think it evokes a strong reaction. So let's talk about Christmas Miracles being the last book in the series, which we've already mentioned. Tell our listeners a bit more about why we made that decision and what prompted you to bring the series to an end.
There were three main reasons in my head. So first of all was the idea of not staying too long at the party. I think you sometimes see criticism levelled at authors that, should have ended it at book 7 and they went on to book 22 or whatever, and it was too long, lost interest, the characters became repetitive, etc. So I absolutely wanted to do justice to this story, these characters and the hedgehogs, by ending on a high, and I felt I could do that within the 6-book series. The second was linked to it, and that's having enough interesting stories to tell. There were lots of characters I could tell stories about, and interestingly, this started off as only being 1 book, and it gradually evolved to 3, 4, 6, and there was lots of stories I could tell, but sometimes their backstory would get encapsulated in someone else's. So, for example, I could have written a book about Samantha's mum being the main character, Samantha's mum Debs, but we already, as readers, knew a lot of her history. It had come out in book 2, New Arrivals at Hedgehog Hollow. So I'd have been telling readers what they already knew, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted it to be a new, valid, interesting story. And the third reason was being able to give Samantha her happy ever after. And because she narrates every book, I need something to happen in her life to write about, because who wants to read about someone who's happy and they go shopping and they look after a couple of hedgehogs and they buy something online, and it's not drama, it's not story, it's not going to make those pages turn. And I like to write her life in a way that has a mix of the lovely, so there's plenty of amazing things that happen to her, but the challenging as well, because that mirrors what we all experience throughout life. And I'd sometimes get messages from readers or see comments on social media saying, or remarks and reviews saying, lay off Samantha, you put her through too much, leave her alone, bless her. And when are you going to let her have her happy ever after? And I love that readers adored Samantha and wanted her to have that happy ever after. But my response, if it was somebody who DM'd me or put a comment on Facebook or whatever, was always that if I give her happy ever after, the series ends. Yeah. Because without conflict, there is no story for me to tell. Conflict is what drives a book. But interesting, although those were my 3 main reasons for it, and I wrote a blog post massively expanding on them at the time that this book came out, Sarah Bennett has raised such a valid one that is kind of my 4th reason. As an author, we need to be challenged, and Sarah knows this because she's written in series herself as 4th series. I think Sarah's on 5th series, 4th series, and knows what it's like, that you stay in this world, you stay with these characters. But in the same way we don't want readers to get bored, we don't want to get bored. And shiny new ideas are prompting all the time, and actually want to give those some headspace, want to do something new, in the same way that people who maybe are in a regular job might, after so many years, think, oh, it's time to move on, do something bigger, do something different. You know, I hope I can be an author forever, but I wouldn't want to write the same thing over and over again. So, you know, very, very valid reason for letting it come to an end.
Yeah, no, I think I completely agree. And I think when we were working on this final book in story, it felt like the natural end. It felt like, yeah, poor Samantha, you couldn't put her through anything else. I think that was probably quite enough for one person. But yeah, no, I think 100% the right decision. Could you give our listeners a bit of a sneak peek? Do you think we'll ever revisit Hedgehog Hollow or the characters that are in there?
Oh, definitely. Although I'd say never say never, I'm not anticipating another story where Samantha is the narrator and we kind of continue with this series effectively saying, oh, you know, it ended at 6, but haha, here's book 7, here's book 8. That's not my plan. For me, this series is over, with the exception of a prequel that we've talked about. When I was having the discussions about expanding the series from 4 books, which we'd agreed on, to 5 or 6. The prequel idea was part of those discussions, wasn't it, Nia? And I really do want to tell the story of Thomas, Gwendolyn, and Terry. So Thomas and Gwendolyn being the ones who originally owned Hedgehog Hollow Rescue Centre. And I am still planning to do that, and those who've got to the end of Hedgehog Hollow know there's some of Christmas Miracles will know there's some little hints about that, but it won't be immediate. It's time to have a break. It's time to brew those ideas. So we cannot absolutely positively say it will happen, but there is a kind of plan that's what we'd quite like to do for summer 2024 on the 4-year anniversary of the first book coming out. But the challenge that I've got with doing the prequel is that it's a historic novel. It will be set back when they're in their teens, 20s. And so the amount of research that I have to do, because it will be in the 60s, which is just before my lifetime, it will take me a lot longer to prepare that, which is again why I'm thinking of it being future. Now, the characters, well, my next release is on the 24th of January, and that is called Healing Hearts at Bumblebee Barn. And it features a rescue centre. It's another dual perspective story, and one of those points of view is Barney, who is Fizz's brother. Barney owns Bumblebee Barn, the family farm that is mentioned at different points during the Hedgehog Hollow series. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers about the story because I'm editing it at the moment as we speak, deadline Sunday. And the main female character in that, somebody called Amber, she stays at Hedgehog Hollow as part of the story. I won't tell you why. So we do get some insight into what's happened since Christmas Miracles ended. Now, those who have read Christmas Miracles know that it ends at Christmas, but we have a follow-on chapter as to what happens the summer the following year. Well, this book is set a year after that summer. So there is kind of Hedgehog Hollow has moved on from the end of Christmas Miracles by a year.
And that feels like a good time to ask, you know, so you've already mentioned that we're maybe going to get a bit of an insight, so we don't want to give any spoilers, but, you know, in your mind, where do you think the characters of Hedgehog Hollow are going next? Like, in your mind, what does the future hold for them?
Oh, I love my characters. So, as I say, without spoilers, but for those who've read the end of Christmas Miracles, you'll know that Samantha reveals some information. And we find out what is next with that information in Healing Hearts at Bumblebee Barn. And because this is a story about Fizz's brother, Fizz, of course, will appear, and we'll find out more about Fizz and certain aspects of her storyline too. I know I'm being a bit cryptic, but I really don't want to give any spoilers for anybody who hasn't read it or the series. But while there are no plot holes in Christmas Miracles, and there's nothing that's kind of left on a cliffhanger or anything like that, that would be far too cruel at the end of the series, readers may have a couple of questions about what happens next, just like they would have at the end of any book. So, you know, when you get to the end of a book and a couple get together and you think, oh, I wonder if they get their happy ever after. I wonder if this happens. I wonder if that happens. Those type of questions, they will get answered in Bumblebee Barn, or Healing Hearts, even at Bumblebee Barn, to give it its full name. Yeah. So yeah, and you know, I do have in my mind some ideas about what's happened to other characters like Chloe and James, Samantha's parents, and we may well address that. But I feel at the end of Hedgehog Hollow, most wrapped up that you know, you can guess, you can speculate what's going to happen for those people.
Now, I thought it would be good fun for us to maybe talk about some of your favourite things about the series. So I'm going to fire some questions at you, Jessica. And anyone in the audience, please feel free to leave a comment, ask a question. More than happy to take your questions during this live. So please do join in. So my first quick fire question for you, Jessica, is what has been your favourite cover and title?
I love all of them, so this is really choose your favourite child, which is usually not an issue for me because I actually only have one. My favourite title is probably Chasing Dreams at Hedgehog Hollow. I just love the idea of chasing your dreams and hoping they come true. But Family Secrets and Christmas Miracles are very close behind.
Yeah.
Right. My favourite cover's harder because each time a new cover came out, I'd be like, oh, that's my new favourite. I'm really torn, and sorry, I'm holding up a hardback and a paperback here. I'm torn between Chasing Dreams at Hedgehog Hollow and Christmas Miracles. It varies every day. It might just be the beautiful sunset colours, the hot air balloons, and the romance of Chasing Dreams. However, a hedgehog with a Christmas hat on. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, how do you compete with that? So yeah, two of them.
I knew that the hedgehog with a Christmas hat had to have a feature. I think that is fair enough. This one may be slightly harder. What's been your favourite scene to write in the series?
Oh, so quick fire question, but there's not a quick fire answer to it. It's so hard to say. There are so many scenes. You know, some I love writing because of the drama in it. Some I love writing for the emotion. You know, if you are a reader who has read with a lump in your throat or tears streaming down your cheeks, I have been a sobbing mess. Tears and snot everywhere, honestly, not attractive. And that's always a moment one of my family members walks in on me as well and like, you all right?
Yeah.
Writing a sad scene. Others are just fun. Now, I don't want to give spoilers away, but some of my favourites are the big fallout with Chloe right at the beginning, at the wedding in Finding Love at Hedgehog Hollow. I mean, that was just great for drama, and it sort of set up a whole set of relationships. I've really enjoyed writing most of the Chloe scenes in the early books because where Chloe goes, drama follows, and she's a real character who most people hate, and for good reasons. I absolutely loved writing the big reveal from Chloe in Family Secrets at Hedgehog Hollow and everything to do with her backstory leading up to the big reveal. It was just like peeling the layers of an onion. I adore that. It gave me such a thrill writing that. I felt like I was there with the backstory scenes. I love the cliffhanger in Family Secrets.
Yeah, that's my fave. Yeah.
I hadn't planned one and it just arrived, and oh my gosh, did I get some stick for that. I had no idea it would have that sort of reaction, but I loved it, and even knowing the reaction, I would do it again. Any scene involving the Grimes family, exciting because they are horrendous, but I do like writing a baddie. And any scene set on Thomas's bench. The minute I write about Thomas's bench, which of course is pictured on the front of book 2, New Arrivals at Hedgehog Hollow, any scenes like that, I am there. I can feel the gentle breeze. I can hear the bird song. I can see the meadow, the butterflies, the bees are just amazing. So I feel like I'm at peace. I once got a review from somebody going, too much sitting on Thomas's bench. Yeah. And I just thought, you have completely...
No, my favourite.
They can never be too much sitting on Thomas's bench.
Yeah. I feel like every time I read a scene where you're sitting on Thomas's bench, I always leave a comment because I'm just like, I love it here. It's so nice. I just want to stay here. Yeah, no, so special. I think you've got some good ones there. Any other final ones before we go on to our next favourite?
That's probably my main one. Although, you know, I'll probably finish this call and then go, oh, yeah, there was that one. Anything that is a secret reveal, I just love because of the way that I write, being a pantser, so flying by the seat of my pants, not having plotted everything out. So when a character even reveals something, I am surprised. So if the reader is surprised, I was too, and that same moment you get, I get, and I love that. But obviously, can't give away what all of the big reveals are.
No. what has been your favourite? This is a fun one. What is your favourite hedgehog rescue?
Oh no, that's an easy one. So that one happens in Christmas Miracles at Hedgehog Hollow, and that is our blonde hedgehog. When Debbie is rescued, it's a lovely rescue. It's a dramatic rescue. I know there's a slight spoiler, me saying that there was a blonde hedgehog in there, but blonde hedgehogs, or I'm going to pronounce this wrong, leucistic. I can't say it. I looked it up for the narrator for the audio, and then I can't remember what the answer was. But it's a pigmentation issue in their spines, so they still look like a normal hedgehog with brown eyes. They're not an albino hedgehog. There are albino hedgehogs as well, but they just have blonde spines, and they are very, very heavily populated in Alderney, randomly, and there's a really big population. And if you look back on some of the Book and Tonic blog posts on the Facebook page, I actually talk about blonde hedgehogs and the story behind them, and there's a couple of photos of them there, and they're amazing. But Google blonde hedgehogs if you've not seen them before. There's actually a hotel on Alderney called the Blonde Hedgehog. It's my list to go there one day and stay and hopefully see some blonde hedgehogs. But yeah, definitely my favourite rescue, that one. Love that one.
I've definitely gone down a rabbit hole of Googling blonde hedgehogs. So anyone join me, please do. Linked to that, your favourite hedgehog name. And I should mention, we've obviously run some brilliant competitions over the last few years for readers to name hedgehogs, which has been fab. What's your favourite hedgehog name?
Interestingly, it's actually from one of those competitions. I wish I could say it's some inspired name that I made up. I mean, making up the hedgehog names has been one of my favourite parts of this series for a bit of fun, particularly when the stories are emotional. And I love that there are themes that they kind of come up with character names around those themes. Some of them have made me laugh, like cruelly calling the hedgehog that has balloon syndrome in A Wedding at Hedgehog Hollow, book 4. Just hold that up. So a really, really inflated hedgehog. It was near Christmas. Bless him, called him Bauble. Couldn't resist it. And in the second book, New Arrivals, we have a bald hedgehog, and I've called him Gollum, and that made me laugh. But the favourite, we ran the competition for books 2, 3, and 4, and the one who came up with a name for New Arrivals at Hedgehog Hollow, Sarah Rothman, Snoop Hoggy Hog. Yeah, oh brilliant. My gosh, it is still genius. It still makes me laugh, and I so wish I could have come up with it. But yes, Sarah, Snoop Hoggy Hog, brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. Another mean one, I'm afraid. Who is your favourite character in the series?
So aside from the hedgehogs, and please take it as read that I love Samantha and Josh. So I've gone kind of not for main. It's probably Fizz. She appeared really unexpectedly in book 2, New Arrivals. All I wanted was somebody to bring in some rescue hogs and be with Samantha on an evening where the Hideous Grimes family brought some trouble to the rescue centre, so that Samantha wasn't alone that particular evening. And that character was just going to appear, drop some hogs off, and that would be it, gone. Only Fizz turned up. And she was so alive with her bright pink hair, her sparkly unicorn t-shirt, her electric blue mini, her lively name, and she just became such a huge part of the family. And I was never going to write a story that was about her, but oh my goodness, Fizz is persistent. And so it felt right that she had her story at the end. Although I have to add that I do have a huge soft spot for Phoebe and Darcy, Thomas and Terry as well. And even Gwendolyn, for a character who never appears on the page, she's very special.
Yeah. Thomas is still my favourite. I know he's not in it for very long, really, but he's still my favourite character. I just have such a soft spot for him. And so I'm definitely, with everyone in the comments, cheering along for a prequel. That's me, because I just love Thomas so much as a character. Okay, what about, out of the 6 books, obviously you didn't necessarily plan for 6 books. Of writing the 6, which one was the hardest one to write?
They've all come with their challenges. So when I wrote the first one, I made a massive, massive error. So in the series, Samantha, she starts off as being a district nurse, And I originally wrote the story where she saves Terry's life, just like she does now, but then he became her patient when she relocated to the Wolds. My sister-in-law works in social services, and particularly dealing with the needs of the elderly who want to stay at home. And so I just said to her, can we have a phone call? I just want to check a few things. And as part of that conversation, the context of all the story came out, and she just went, you can't have her inheriting something from one of her patients. There'll be questions of coercement, there'll be all sorts of stuff. And I just went, no. So I had to rewrite, before I submitted this, was rewrite the entire book effectively. Lots stayed in, but Samantha's job had to become something different. How she got to continue to know Terry after the rescue, after she saved his life, Terry Thomas even, after she saved his life, had to be completely different. So that was a very valuable lesson learned. I then got in a pickle with new arrivals as well, book 2, because originally I was just planning to write it from Samantha's perspective, and Nia probably remembers I sent this little help email going, I'm really struggling to tell this story. It's meant to be Josh's backstory, and I am inventing reasons for Samantha to literally follow him around and be every conversation, follow him into the toilet, do whatever, just so that we could find out his perspective. Now, I'd already told a dual perspective story with All You Need Is Love, which had come out previously, and so I knew I could write that way. Luckily, Nia was brilliant, said, yeah, do it like that. It sounds much more sensible. But I'd done so much from Samantha's perspective, so I had to redo that all. And then when the edits came back, we can get Nia's feedback. The timeline just needed to shift. A few things happened too quickly, which normally would be okay. But when you're dictated by wildlife and the story was about hodglet rescues, so the babies, I can't suddenly change when hedgehog baby season is. So I had to massively change around everything that happened. And then certain things couldn't happen if they were at a different time. So that was really hard. Book 3, Family Secrets, fairly easy.
Yeah. No, I still remember reading that for the first time, because I just literally flew through it in an evening, and I was like, oh, there isn't really much to do. So it's just so brilliant. Yeah, that one was easy.
Yeah, there's just a few bits on Chloe's backstory that we need to just add substance to. Book 4, A Wedding at Hedgehog Hollow. Oh my goodness, I'd put a whopper of a cliffhanger at the end of book 3, hadn't I? And being a pantser, I didn't know how that was going to be resolved. So I started book 4 going, oh, okay, how am I going to dig myself out of that? And that made it difficult. And the research that I did, because of what the cliffhanger is, I couldn't get answers. And anybody who knows it will probably understand why. It's to do with something financial, and banks weren't prepared to give that information out. I get it. So
very
that was hard. Yeah, and that was hard. But the absolute hardest one was Chasing Dreams, because it involved a lot happening away from the rescue centre. It was the first time I had a secondary character who either didn't live, wasn't staying at, or didn't work at Hedgehog Hollow. Excuse me. And it meant that quite a lot had to happen away from that. Samantha and Josh were also on their honeymoon, so things had to happen away. And I had this panic, didn't I, Nia, going, first half of the book isn't even at Hedgehog Hollow. A reader's going to hate it for that. So I struggled a bit, tripping over myself, second guessing what the feedback might be. But it really picked up, and actually we've had some really positive feedback about the setting being elsewhere and seeing a different side to it and having a different character and different perspective. So yeah, but that was probably, as a story, and also the reveal. I wanted to speak to somebody to tell me their story, which would link to the reveal in that story, and I kept getting closed doors on that. So I had to very much rely on internet research, which obviously there's loads and there's people telling case studies and things there, but that made that a little bit harder as well. So yeah, and then Christmas Miracles had its own challenges as well. Definitely Chasing Dreams, but that mess right at the beginning where I got something wrong, I'll never make that same mistake again. I now know to check out the legal aspects before.
It's a tip, isn't it, for anyone writing a series? That is a very good tip. what has been the most touching reader feedback? I mean, I know that you get contacted by readers a lot. I know that you get some amazing emails, and sometimes you're kind enough to share them with me, and you just get the most incredible feedback from people and how you've touched them. What's been the most, is there one that stands out for you?
It's when readers have got in touch and they've said that there's something in the storyline that they have personally experienced, or they know somebody who has, and it has resonated with them. And while it's flattering to hear that I've represented that particular storyline realistically and with sensitivity, which I always hoped would be the case, I do massive amounts of research. And some storylines I do have personal experience of, some I don't. And where I've got personal experience, I tend to talk about it in the acknowledgements. But it's not the saying, oh yeah, well done, you've done it really well. It's when they say that how it's helped them, that it's given them hope, it's comforted them, lifted them. It may have made them cry, sometimes for hours, because it's addressed something that they've kind of put a lid on and pushed away, and they've known they needed to address. And this has helped them do that. And they've actually found that really, really cathartic, dealing with some demons that they have tried not to. And some of the messages that I do get telling me this, it just makes me cry, because, first of all, I'm heartbroken that people have been through some of these, quite horrific experience. But then it touches me so much that books, and specifically in this case, my books, can have the power to help them heal. And when I started writing, I had no idea that would happen, never even entered my head. And it is the most unexpected and beautiful gift to have someone saying, I feel differently about myself having read that. I feel better about myself. I feel hopeful that I can deal with this, because your characters, even though they deal with some difficult things, there is always an uplifting message of hope, and they come out of it in a better place. And to have the readers go on that journey, just unbelievable. So obviously I can't share anybody's specific stories, but that's so special.
That is incredibly special. And I'm going to cry, so I'm going to stop. Okay, so unbelievably, we're actually running out of time. So we have got lots of questions from the audience, but if you don't mind, Jessica, going and replying to those separately, that would be brilliant. Brilliant. I've just got one final question for you, which is a sad one. What are you going to miss most about the Hedgehog Hollow series?
So much. I mentioned earlier that I just love writing the scenes on Thomas's bench. I already miss sitting on that bench. It transports me gazing at those beautiful meadows. I'm going to miss the characters. They have been with me for 6 books. So that's roughly 600,000 words. The first book came out in July 2000, as you've said, but I started writing it in late 2019. Well, maybe even earlier than that. And the Open University exercise was in late 2017 or early 2018. So I've had some of these characters in my head for nearly 5 years. I don't miss Samantha and Fizz just yet, because they are both in Healing Hearts, which, as I said, I'm still writing. But once I'm done with that particular story, then I am going to miss them. And of course, I'm going to miss the hedgehogs. It has been fascinating researching into them, especially the really unusual cases. I've learned so much. You've learned so much. Readers have learned so much. But the great thing is that I'm friends with Wold's Hedgehog Rescue, and I occasionally do little posters for their social media. And so I get to go to the real Hedgehog Hollow in the Yorkshire Wolds and see hedgehogs and help out if I have a moment between writing. So I get to see real hedgehogs, and that's just lovely.
Oh yeah, I think that's so nice that you can carry on that connection with the Hedgehog Rescue Centre in the Wolds. And I think that, I know that they're very grateful for the awareness that you create for their special cause. And you still get your hedgehog fix. You just go down in person and get them there. Well, thank you so much, Jessica, for your time this evening. Thank you for your brilliant series. Thank you for bringing joy to so many hundreds of thousands of readers with this series. And just to remind everyone, the next one, not in this series, a standalone novel, but with some familiar faces, is Healing Hearts at Bumblebee Barn, which is coming out in January. Jessica's going to come back, reply on the comments to any questions that have been asked. So please do keep asking questions. And thank you so much. So many people have joined us this evening. It's just been amazing. So
I'm watching some of the comments coming up, and there's some lovely feedback. I really appreciate it all, and so yeah, I will definitely come in. My stomach's rumbling, so I might have my tea and then come and do it, but I definitely will reply to them this evening. So thank you so much.
Thanks. Thank you for joining, everyone, and we'll see you soon. And thank you very much, Jessica. I can't wait to read your next one on Sunday.
Yay!
Cheers. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.